Tom was a quiet man who lived on the edge of a small Montana town. He loved nature more than anything else. Every weekend, he hiked the trails that wound through the mountains near his home. He carried a small backpack with water, snacks, and a notebook where he sometimes wrote down his thoughts. The trails were his escape from the ordinary life in town. Tom never went alone. His dog, Max, a loyal brown shepherd with bright eyes and sharp ears, always accompanied him. Max was more than a pet. He was Tom's friend, his protector, and sometimes Tom thought his guide. Max knew the mountains better than any map. He could smell the hidden paths, hear the rustle of distant animals, and sense the coming of storms. On a Saturday morning, the sky was a clear blue. The sun shone warmly on the pine trees, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and damp earth. Tom packed his backpack, attached Max's leash, and set out toward a trail he had not explored in several months. He liked returning to familiar places, but he also enjoyed finding something new. As they walked, Max ran ahead, sniffing rocks and trees. Tom smiled as he watched the dog explore. He loved the way Max's tail wagged whenever he found a new scent. The mountain path wound upward through tall pines and thick underbrush. Birds chirped above, and a stream gurgled nearby. The morning was peaceful, almost magical. Suddenly, Max stopped. His ears perked up and his body tensed. Tom slowed down and followed his dog's gaze. Across the sky, a bright streak of light moved swiftly, burning with an orange glow. It was unlike anything Tom had ever seen. The streak fell behind the hills, disappearing from sight in seconds. Tom's heart beat faster.
"What in the world was that?"
he whispered. Max barked once and ran ahead, moving toward a small clearing that Tom had never noticed before. He followed Max carefully, stepping over roots and rocks. The clearing was hidden among tall pine trees. Sunlight streamed through the branches, casting warm patches on the soft forest floor. In the middle of the clearing, the ground was slightly burned, and the air smelled strange, like metal and smoke. Tom knelt down and saw something partially buried in the dirt. It was a smooth black stone. It glimmered with tiny sparks, as if tiny stars were trapped inside. Tom reached out and touched it gently. The stone was warm under his fingers, pulsing softly like it had a heartbeat of its own. Max sniffed the stone, then barked again, staring toward the trees. Tom looked around nervously. The forest seemed quieter than usual. The birds had stopped singing, and even the wind was still. He picked up the stone and put it in his backpack carefully. Whatever it was, he knew it was unusual. He had never seen anything like it in the mountains. Max continued to sniff the surrounding area, his tail stiff, his ears alert. Tom trusted Max's instincts more than his own. The dog was telling him that something important had happened. Tom stood and looked toward the hills where the fiery streak had vanished. He could not see anything, but he felt a strange energy in the air, a sense that something big was about to happen. They decided to head back to town. Tom kept the stone carefully in his backpack, thinking about what it could be. He wondered if scientists or meteorologists would know. He also thought about the legends the old people in town sometimes told. Stories of strange stones and falling stars had been passed down for generations, but this was different. He could feel it. On the way down, Max ran ahead and paused again. Tom noticed small footprints in the soft soil, not quite human and not quite like any animal he had seen. The prints led to a hidden path that twisted between the trees. Tom followed, feeling a mixture of excitement and caution. The path opened onto a small creek that sparkled in the morning light. Max jumped across easily, but Tom had to step carefully from rock to rock. On the other side, he noticed a small hill that seemed to rise higher than the surrounding trees. He climbed it slowly, with Max close behind. From the top, he could see his town in the distance. Smoke from chimneys rose gently, and the roads were quiet at this hour. But the mountains behind the town looked different. There was a faint glow coming from the hill where the stone had fallen. It was not fire, but a soft orange light pulsing gently like the stone in his backpack. Tom's mind raced with questions. What had fallen from the sky? Was it a meteor? Could it be something more? He thought about the townspeople, how they would react if they saw the stone or the light. Some would be curious, some frightened. Tom himself was not sure what he felt, a mix of wonder and unease. As they walked back to town, Max suddenly stopped and barked at a small animal near the trail. It was a rabbit, but not like any rabbit Tom had seen. Its fur shimmered slightly as if it carried tiny sparks of light from the stone. Max growled softly and the rabbit darted away into the forest. Tom followed, intrigued. Could the stone be affecting the forest? By the time they reached the edge of town, the sun was higher in the sky. People were starting their day, unaware of the strange events in the mountains. Tom kept the stone hidden in his backpack, careful not to draw attention. He wanted to understand it first before anyone else saw it. Max walked calmly beside him, as if he understood the importance of keeping the secret safe. At home, Tom set the stone on his kitchen table. It pulsed gently, almost like it was alive. Max lay at his feet watching. Tom poured himself a cup of coffee and stared at the stone, trying to think of what to do next. The quiet town seemed far away compared to the energy radiating from the strange object. Hours passed. Tom researched falling stars, unusual stones, and mysterious objects. Nothing matched what he had found. The stone seemed to have its own energy, its own story. Max never left his side, always alert, always protective. That evening, as the sun began to set behind the mountains, Tom took the stone outside. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. He held the stone in his hands, feeling its warmth and pulsing light. Max barked softly, sensing something too. Suddenly, a small spark shot from the stone into the air. It hovered for a moment, then vanished into the evening sky. Tom gasped. The stone was not just a rock. It was something alive, something powerful. He realized that whatever had fallen from the sky could change his town forever. Max barked again, and Tom knew they were not alone in this discovery. The adventure had just begun. That night, Tom placed the stone carefully on a shelf in his home. He locked the door and sat beside Max, thinking about what tomorrow might bring. The stars shone brightly above Montana, and Tom felt a connection between the fiery streak he had seen, the stone, and the quiet town he loved. Tom did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing. Life in the small town would never be the same again. The mountains had secrets, and now he and Max were part of one of those secrets. The next morning, Tom woke up early. Sunlight spilled into his small kitchen, and Max was already pacing near the door. He seemed restless, as if he knew something important was waiting for them outside. Tom rubbed his eyes and stretched. The strange stone rested on the shelf where he had put it last night, still pulsing softly with a warm orange light. Tom poured himself a cup of coffee and watched Max carefully. The dog's ears twitched and his tail wagged in short bursts. Max's excitement was unusual even for him. Tom decided it was time to return to the mountains. He needed to understand more about the stone. He packed a small backpack with essentials, grabbed a notebook, and attached Max's leash. Together they walked toward the trail that led to the clearing. The forest was quiet in the morning light. Birds sang softly and the breeze rustled the tall pine trees. Tom followed Max along the familiar trail, noting every detail around him. Max, however, was unusually focused. He ran a few steps ahead, then paused to sniff the ground carefully. Tom realized that Max was trying to lead him somewhere specific. After about an hour of walking, they reached the clearing where Tom had first found the stone. The ground was still warm and the smell of metal lingered faintly in the air. Tom set down his backpack and knelt to examine the soil. There were faint marks as if something heavy had fallen and then moved. Max sniffed the ground intensely, then barked and ran toward the edge of the clearing. Tom followed quickly. Max stopped at a small patch of rocks partially hidden by fallen pine needles. He pawed at the ground until the earth shifted, revealing a hidden hole. Tom leaned closer, carefully shining his flashlight into the opening. The hole was shallow but deep enough to hide something important. At the bottom, Tom could see a soft glowing light. Max barked and circled the hole, clearly aware of the unusual energy beneath. Tom felt a shiver run down his spine. He reached in carefully and pulled out a small metallic object. It was smooth and round, unlike any stone he had ever seen. Tiny lines of light moved across its surface like patterns on a screen. The object pulsed with the same energy as the stone in his home. Tom held it in his hands, amazed and a little frightened. "What are you, little friend?" he whispered. Max sniffed it, then nudged Tom's hand with his nose, as if urging him to keep it safe. Tom carefully put the object in his backpack beside the stone and sat back against a tree. He needed time to think. For hours they stayed in the clearing. Tom observed the energy of the objects, taking notes in his notebook. Max stayed alert, watching the forest around them. Occasionally, small animals would peek from the trees, but they did not approach too closely. There was something in the clearing that made even the forest creatures cautious. By late afternoon, Tom decided it was time to head back to town. Max led the way, moving quickly but carefully. The stone and the object in his backpack seemed to pulse more strongly as they descended the trail. Tom wondered if the energy reacted to movement or to the presence of humans. He had never experienced anything like it. Back in town, Tom placed the objects on his kitchen table again. Max lay beside him, still watching the objects as if he understood their importance. Tom knew he could not keep the discovery to himself forever. Something extraordinary had fallen from the sky, and it could change their quiet town. He needed to be careful, but he also needed help. The next morning, Tom decided to share his discovery with someone he trusted. He chose Clara, the local librarian. She had lived in the town her whole life and loved stories about nature, history, and science. Tom thought she would understand the importance of the objects without spreading fear. Clara listened carefully as Tom explained what had happened. He showed her the stone and the metallic object. She examined them closely, her eyes wide with curiosity and surprise. "Tom, these are incredible," she said. "I have never seen anything like this in my life. The patterns, the energy, they are not natural. We need to study them carefully." Tom nodded. He felt relieved that Clara understood. Together, they decided to examine the objects in the library, using magnifying lenses and books about meteorites, crystals, and metals. Hours passed as they studied every detail. The stone's surface seemed to shift slightly when touched, and the metallic object emitted soft pulses of light in response to movement. Max, as always, stayed nearby. At one point, he suddenly barked and ran toward a corner of the library. Tom and Clara followed him, curious. Max pawed at a small crack in the floor near the back wall. When they looked closer, they noticed faint scratches and faint glowing marks. Tom realized that Max had sensed something hidden, something connected to the objects. They carefully lifted a small panel in the floor. Beneath it, they found a hidden compartment. Inside were several small items, each glowing faintly like the stone and the metallic object. Tom and Clara were astonished. It seemed the fiery streak from the sky had not come alone. Pieces of it had landed in the mountains and hidden themselves carefully. Clara carefully placed her hand on one of the smaller objects. "Tom, this could explain legends in the town," she said. "The elders have always told stories of falling stars that brought energy to the land. Perhaps this is what they were talking about." Max was right. He led us to the key discovery. Tom looked at Max and smiled. The dog wagged his tail proudly. It was as if Max understood the importance of what they had found. The hidden objects pulsed softly, and Tom felt a connection to the mountains and sky that he had never felt before. Over the next few days, Tom and Clara studied the objects carefully. They kept their discovery a secret, but they began to notice strange effects. Plants near Tom's home grew faster, animals seemed calmer, and the air felt fresher. Even the town seemed lighter, more energetic, as if the energy from the objects had begun to spread. One evening, Tom and Clara sat in the library, watching the glowing objects. Max lay between them, resting his head on Tom's knee. Tom realized that the objects were not just powerful, they were alive in some way. They responded to attention, care, and curiosity. He wondered if the town would ever be ready for their presence. Suddenly, Max barked sharply. Tom and Clara jumped. Max ran to the library door and growled at something outside. Tom looked through the window and saw a small fiery light moving near the mountains. The streak from the sky had returned, smaller but just as bright. Tom's heart raced. The town's life was about to change, and Max had seen it first. Tom and Clara looked at each other, understanding the importance of the moment. "We cannot ignore this," Clara said. "The town must know, but we must prepare. Max has shown us the way." Tom nodded. Max barked again and wagged his tail. It was clear he was ready for the adventure ahead. The stone, the metallic object, and the small hidden items were only the beginning. The mountain still held secrets, and the fiery streak in the sky promised more surprises. That night, Tom placed the objects carefully in a secure box. He looked at Max, who lay quietly, his eyes shining. Tom realized that their quiet town was about to enter a new chapter. The discovery from the sky would change lives, bring curiosity, and perhaps even danger. But with Max's guidance and Clara's wisdom, Tom felt ready. Outside, the stars shone brightly over Montana. The mountains glowed faintly with the energy of the objects, and a gentle wind carried whispers of change. Tom knew the town would never be the same, and the fiery streak in the sky was only the first sign of what was coming. Max rested his head on Tom's lap, calm but alert. The dog had led them to a discovery that would alter the town forever. Tom smiled and patted Max's head, knowing that together they were ready for whatever mysteries the mountains held. The adventure was only beginning, and the town of Montana was about to witness something extraordinary. The following week, the town of Montana began to notice subtle changes. At first, people thought it was just the season shifting, but small, unusual events caught attention. Flowers bloomed earlier than usual in front yards, birds sang in unusual harmony, and even the local creek sparkled more than before. The townspeople whispered among themselves, curious but not frightened. Tom noticed the changes immediately. Every morning he and Max walked the streets quietly. Max seemed happier, more energetic, yet always alert. Tom kept the stone and the metallic object in a secure box at home. He did not want anyone to see them, but he could feel their energy spreading beyond his house. Max seemed to sense the presence of something new in the town, and he often led Tom to areas where the energy felt strongest. Clara visited daily to help study the objects. She had brought books about astronomy, minerals, and history. She suggested they might be dealing with fragments from a meteor or some other celestial object. Tom, however, was certain it was more than just a rock. The objects pulsed, reacted to touch, and even seemed to communicate in subtle ways. Max's reactions confirmed Tom's belief. The dog could sense something that humans could not. One afternoon, Max suddenly barked and ran toward the edge of town near the small park. Tom followed quickly, curious. Max stopped near an old oak tree and pawed at the ground. Tom noticed small scratches and faint glowing marks in the soil. He knelt to examine them. The marks matched patterns he had seen on the stone and the metallic object. Clara arrived shortly after. She knelt beside Tom, examining the marks carefully. "It is like the objects are trying to communicate," she said softly. "Max must sense where the energy is strongest. This is incredible." Tom studied the area around the oak tree. The soil was warm and soft, and a gentle light seemed to shimmer near the roots. Max barked again and circled the tree, sniffing the ground. Tom and Clara realized that the energy was spreading, not randomly, but in patterns that connected certain points in the town. The objects were alive in some way, linking the mountains and the town. That evening, Tom placed the objects on a small table in his home. Max sat beside him, watching every movement. Clara suggested using small mirrors and lenses to reflect light from the objects and observe any hidden patterns. They spent hours experimenting, and soon they discovered something astonishing. When light from the stone hit the metallic object at a certain angle, faint images appeared in the air like tiny holograms. The images showed mountains, forests, and a path leading to a hidden valley. Tom and Clara exchanged amazed glances. "Max must know this path," Tom said. The dog barked once and wagged his tail as if confirming their thought. The objects were guiding them to something important. The next morning, Tom and Clara decided to follow Max into the mountains. They packed lightly, taking only essentials, the stone and the metallic object. Max led confidently along trails Tom had never explored. The dog's instincts were sharp, and Tom realized he could trust Max to guide them safely. The journey took several hours. They passed narrow paths, crossed streams, and climbed small hills. Each time they reached a point where the energy from the objects was strong, Max paused, sniffed, and moved in a specific direction. Tom noticed that the objects pulsed more strongly whenever they approached the hidden valley. Finally, they reached a dense thicket of trees. Max ran ahead and stopped at the edge of a small clearing. Tom and Clara looked around in awe. In the middle of the clearing was a crystal-like formation, rising from the ground like a small tower. It shimmered with colors that shifted from orange to blue to green, reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. Tom stepped closer, feeling a mixture of wonder and caution. The energy from the objects was strongest here. He held the stone and the metallic object toward the crystal formation. The crystal pulsed in response, sending waves of warmth through Tom's hands. Clara gasped. "This must be the source of the energy," she said. "Everything in the town, the mountains, the air, it all comes from this crystal." The fiery streak from the sky was only the beginning. Max barked and ran around the clearing, sniffing every corner. Tom noticed small animals cautiously observing from the trees. The energy from the crystal seemed to affect every living thing nearby. Plants grew slightly taller, flowers bloomed brighter, and the air felt fresher. Tom and Clara spent hours observing the crystal formation. They discovered that placing the stone and the metallic object near it made the energy pulse more clearly. Tiny sparks of light moved between the objects and the crystal, creating patterns that seemed to tell a story. Clara sketched the patterns in her notebook. Tom realized that the crystal was alive in some way. It responded to energy, attention, and care. Max's presence seemed important as well. Whenever the dog moved closer, the energy pulsed more strongly. Tom understood that Max was not just a guide but also a protector of the crystal. By evening, they decided to return to town. Tom carried the stone and the metallic object carefully. Max led the way, moving swiftly and confidently. The crystal in the clearing seemed to settle as they left, as if it recognized that they would return with care and respect. Back in town, Tom and Clara began to plan. They could not reveal the discovery immediately. The town needed preparation, and they needed to understand the crystal's power better. Max remained alert, watching the house, the street, and the mountains beyond. It was clear he knew the importance of their secret. Over the next few days, small events continued in town. People noticed plants growing faster, children feeling unusually energetic, and even animals acting friendlier. The townspeople smiled at the changes, unaware of the true cause. Tom and Clara realized that the crystal's energy was spreading naturally, gently affecting life in Montana. One morning, Max barked urgently and ran toward the mountains again. Tom and Clara followed, curious. Max led them to a spot where another small object from the fiery streak had landed. It was partially buried in the soil, glowing faintly. Tom dug it out carefully. The object matched the metallic object they had already found, and when placed near the crystal formation, it pulsed even more strongly. Clara studied the patterns of energy. "Tom, there are more fragments," she said. The streak from the sky scattered them across the mountains. "Each piece strengthens the crystal and its effect on the town." Tom nodded, understanding the task ahead. They needed to find every fragment to fully understand the crystal's power. Max barked once, running ahead, clearly aware of the path. The dog's instincts were guiding them to each discovery. As the sun set over Montana, Tom, Clara, and Max returned home. They placed the new fragment near the previous objects. Light sparkled from the crystal, pulsing gently. Tom realized that their quiet town was already beginning to change. The people felt happier. The air was cleaner and the land seemed richer. The fiery streak from the sky had brought more than mystery. It had brought life and energy. That night, Tom sat with Max by the fireplace. He held the stone in his hand and watched the dog sleep peacefully. He felt a deep connection to the mountains, the crystal, and the objects they had discovered. The adventure was far from over, but for the first time, Tom felt confident that the town was ready for the changes. Clara visited once more that evening. They discussed the next steps carefully. They needed to continue finding fragments, observing the effects, and understanding the crystal. Max slept nearby, ready to lead them whenever needed. Outside, the stars shone brighter than usual. The mountains glowed faintly in the night, as if sharing their secret with the sky. Tom realized that life in Montana would never be the same again. Max had led them to a discovery that would change the town forever. The energy from the crystal, guided by the objects and Max's instincts, promised more surprises, more discoveries, and a deeper connection between the town and the mountains. Tom knew that their journey was only beginning. The fiery streak that first caught his attention had started something extraordinary. Max's discovery was only the first step in a story that would reshape the town and reveal secrets hidden for centuries. By the time the next week arrived, the town of Montana had begun to notice more than small changes. People smiled more often, children laughed freely, and the streets seemed livelier. Even the air smelled fresher, and the mornings felt lighter. The townspeople did not know why, but life seemed brighter. Tom observed all of this carefully. He knew the cause of the changes, the energy of the crystal in the mountains and the fragments they had found. Tom and Clara continued their work in secret. Every day they followed Max into the mountains to locate the remaining fragments. Max was always alert, sniffing the ground, ears pricked, and tail straight. He seemed to know where each fragment was hidden. It was clear to Tom that Max was not only their guide, but also a guardian of the mysterious energy that had fallen from the sky. One morning, Max led them to a small hill at the edge of a dense forest. The air felt different here, warmer, lighter, and full of a quiet energy. Tom noticed faint, glowing marks on the soil, similar to the patterns from the other fragments. Max ran in small circles, barking softly, urging them to search carefully. Tom began digging gently, and soon they uncovered another fragment. This one was larger than the previous pieces, smooth and oval, with soft lines of glowing light that shifted in rhythm. Clara examined the fragment and gasped softly. "Tom, every new piece we find strengthens the energy in the town. The crystal is connected to all of them, and Max is guiding us perfectly." Tom nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and wonder. The dog had led them this far, and it was clear that more fragments meant more energy spreading through the town. As the day passed, they placed the new fragment near the others in the hidden clearing with the main crystal formation. The crystal pulsed brighter than ever. Tiny sparks of light moved between all the fragments in the central crystal, forming patterns that seemed almost like a map of the mountains. Max barked softly and circled the crystal, clearly sensing the importance of their discovery. Back in town, the effects became more noticeable. Flowers in gardens grew taller and bloomed in brighter colors. Small animals wandered closer to houses, friendly and calm. Even the town's river seemed clearer and more lively. People whispered about the unusual changes but were happy rather than frightened. Tom and Clara observed from a distance, satisfied that the energy was helping their community. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Tom, Clara, and Max walked to the crystal formation one last time for the day. The energy radiating from it filled the forest, making the air shimmer in soft colors. Max ran ahead, alert and careful, guiding them along the winding trail. Tom felt a deep connection to the mountains and the mysterious crystal. He realized that this energy was alive and responsive. Suddenly, Max barked loudly and ran to a small opening near the crystal. Tom and Clara followed quickly. Inside, they found a hidden space beneath the earth. Max pawed at a smaller crystal embedded in the soil, one that seemed older than the fragments they had already found. Its glow was faint but steady, and when Tom placed the stone and metallic object near it, the light strengthened and spread through the entire clearing. Clara studied the patterns carefully. "Tom, this smaller crystal might be the source of the main crystal's energy. It has been hidden here for a long time. Max must have sensed it." Tom nodded. He realized that each fragment, along with Max's guidance, was uncovering the crystal's true power. Over the next few days, Tom, Clara, and Max returned to the mountains regularly. They uncovered the remaining fragments, each one glowing and pulsating with energy. Max led them precisely to each location. By the end of the week, all the fragments were gathered near the main crystal. The crystal's light was now visible from a distance, casting soft, colorful glows across the trees and hills. The town began to feel the full effect of the crystal. People noticed that their crops grew healthier, and the air felt refreshing. Children laughed and played outdoors more often. Even the town's animals were calmer and friendlier. It was as if the energy from the crystal had made life more vibrant. Tom and Clara watched the changes quietly, proud of the role they played, but careful to keep the crystal's location secret. One day, Max led them to a hidden path deep in the mountains. Along the path, they discovered a small waterfall with a clear pool at its base. Max ran ahead and barked near the edge of the water. Tom and Clara approached and saw that the pool glowed faintly, reflecting the light of the fragments they carried. Clara knelt down to examine it. "Tom, this must be part of the crystal's network. Water, energy, life. It all connects. Max has led us to the final piece of the puzzle." Tom carefully placed the fragments near the pool. The energy from the crystal, the fragments, and the pool merged, creating a soft, radiant light that filled the clearing. Max barked joyfully, running around the pool. The water shimmered with colors that shifted and danced, and the surrounding trees seemed to grow taller and healthier instantly. Clara smiled. "Tom, this is amazing. The town will feel these changes more strongly now. Max has guided us perfectly. Everything is connected." Tom nodded, feeling awe and gratitude. The dog had led them to the heart of the energy, showing them the way to strengthen the crystal's effect. That evening, Tom returned home with Max. He placed the fragments and the stone on a secure shelf, and wrote in his notebook about the day's discoveries. Clara joined him shortly after. They discussed ways to observe the energy safely and understand how it influenced the town. Max rested, nearby, alert yet calm, as if he knew that the crystal's work was only beginning. Over the next few days, more people in town noticed changes. Gardens were flourishing, the creek sparkled like crystal, and the air was fresher than ever. Children played outside longer, and people smiled more often. Even the town's animals were calmer and friendlier. No one could explain the changes, but everyone felt happier. Tom and Clara understood that the crystal's energy was spreading through the land, guided by the fragments and Max's instinct. One morning, Tom noticed a group of townspeople near the park, looking around curiously. Max barked softly and ran toward them, alert and protective. Tom realized that it might be time for the town to learn about the crystal in a safe way. The changes had already affected their lives, and it was only a matter of time before someone discovered the source of the energy. Tom and Clara began planning carefully. They decided to reveal the crystal's location only to those who could understand and respect it. Max seemed to sense their decision, wagging his tail and lying quietly by Tom's side. The dog had guided them to every discovery, and now he would guide them in sharing it responsibly. That evening, the mountains glowed softly under the setting sun. The crystal and fragments pulsed gently, filling the forest with warm light. Tom and Clara sat with Max, watching the energy ripple through the trees. They understood that the town's life was changing, guided by the crystal's power and Max's instincts. The adventure was far from over. The town of Montana would continue to feel the effects of the mysterious energy. Max had led them to the most important discovery of their lives, and the crystal promised more surprises, more growth, and more connection between the town and the mountains. Tom realized that their quiet life had become extraordinary, all because of a fiery streak in the sky, a loyal dog, and the hidden crystal that held the energy of the mountains. Max rested his head on Tom's lap, calm and watchful. The crystal's light pulsed softly, and the town beyond the mountains was alive with energy. Tom smiled and patted Max, knowing that the dog had changed their lives forever. Together, they were ready for whatever came next. The mountains held secrets, the crystal held energy, and Max held the key to understanding it all. Life in the town of Montana would never be the same again, and the story of the fiery streak and the hidden crystal was only beginning to unfold. The town of Montana had changed quietly, almost magically. People noticed subtle differences in their daily lives, though no one yet understood the cause. Gardens flourished, animals acted calm and friendly, and even the river sparkled in sunlight. The townspeople smiled more often, walked with a lighter step, and felt happier in their hearts. Tom, Clara, and Max knew the reason. It was the crystal in the mountains, strengthened by the fragments they had discovered. One morning, Max ran around the house, barking and wagging his tail energetically. Tom and Clara had prepared for this day. They decided it was time to reveal the truth to the town, but only in a careful way. Max's excitement told them that he understood the importance of sharing the secret, and he would guide them safely. Tom and Clara gathered a few trusted townspeople. They chose people who were responsible and kind, those who would respect the crystal's power. Among them were farmers, teachers, and the town's mayor. Max led the group up the familiar mountain trails, alert and confident. Everyone followed, curious and slightly nervous. As they approached the clearing, the group saw the crystal for the first time. It rose from the ground like a glowing tower, pulsing gently with colors that shifted from orange to blue to green. The fragments around it sparkled and sent tiny sparks of light toward the main crystal. Everyone gasped. The air was filled with warmth and a calm energy. "This is incredible," the mayor said, stepping closer carefully. "What is this?" Tom smiled and held the stone and metallic object in his hands. "This crystal fell from the sky," he explained. "It brought energy, life, and changes to our town. Max led us to discover it and all its fragments. The crystal's energy spreads gently through the land, helping plants grow, calming animals, and even making people feel happier." Clara stepped forward. "The crystal is alive in a way. It responds to attention, care, and respect. Max guided us to every piece, and together, the fragments and the main crystal create a network of energy that touches the town." The townspeople looked around in awe. They could feel the warmth and gentle vibrations in the air. Some knelt down to touch the ground, amazed at the subtle glow around the roots of nearby trees. Children laughed and ran around the clearing, feeling joyful and free. Max barked happily and ran among them, guiding them gently without startling anyone. Over the next few hours, Tom and Clara explained how the crystal and fragments worked. They showed patterns of energy and how the town had already benefited from the gentle influence. Farmers noticed their crops had grown taller, rivers seemed clearer, and the town felt more vibrant. The townspeople began to understand that the crystal's power was not dangerous but life-giving. Max led the townspeople carefully around the clearing, showing them where each fragment had been found. The people followed the dog, respecting his instincts. Tom and Clara noticed that every time Max approached a fragment, the crystal pulsed more brightly, and the energy in the clearing grew stronger. The townspeople were amazed at the connection between the dog, the crystal, and the fragments. By evening, everyone had spent hours in the clearing, feeling the energy, observing the light, and learning to respect the crystal. The mayor spoke to the group. "This is the most extraordinary thing our town has ever experienced. We must protect it and care for it. I believe that the crystal is a gift, and we are fortunate to have discovered it." Tom nodded. "We should always respect the crystal and its energy. It is part of the mountains, part of the land, and part of the life around us." Max helped us understand it. "Together, we can make sure it continues to benefit the town safely." The townspeople agreed. They decided to create a small protected area around the clearing and the crystal. Only trusted people would visit, guided by Tom, Clara, and Max. The rest of the town could enjoy the effects of the energy naturally, without disturbing the crystal or fragments. Over the following days, Max continued to lead small groups to the clearing. Each time they visited, the crystal pulsed brightly, and the townspeople felt stronger, calmer, and happier. The town's energy seemed connected to the crystal, and everyone understood the importance of caring for the land, the mountains, and the natural balance. Tom, Clara, and Max became guardians of the crystal. They studied its energy, observed its effects, and ensured that the fragments remained safe. Max, as always, guided them with instinct and intelligence, protecting the crystal from harm and showing them new ways to understand its power. Life in Montana changed. The town became more connected, not just to the mountains but to each other. People worked together more kindly, helped their neighbors, and respected nature in ways they had not before. The energy of the crystal seemed to influence not only the land but the hearts of the townspeople. One day, a group of children followed Max to the edge of the clearing. He barked softly, letting them know it was safe to approach while still guiding them carefully. The children gasped at the shimmering light of the crystal and the colorful sparks moving between the fragments. They laughed, feeling the joy and warmth of the energy. Tom and Clara watched, smiling. The crystal was not just a source of energy but a teacher, showing everyone the importance of care, respect, and harmony. As the sun set over the mountains, the clearing glowed softly with the crystal's energy. Max lay beside Tom, calm and content. Clara stood nearby, watching the townspeople interact with the energy safely. Tom realized that the adventure had brought the town together in a way no one could have imagined. Max had discovered the crystal, led them to the fragments, and helped unite the town through care, respect, and understanding. That night, Tom sat with Max on the porch of his home. He looked toward the mountains where the crystal pulsed softly through the trees. The town slept peacefully, unaware of the full power and beauty of the discovery, yet benefiting from its presence. Max rested his head on Tom's lap, his eyes reflecting the stars above. Tom felt a deep sense of gratitude. The fiery streak he had seen in the sky, the mysterious stone, the metallic object, and Max's discovery had changed their lives forever. The town was united, happier, and more connected to the land and mountains than ever before. Life had become extraordinary, guided by the crystal and protected by the most loyal dog imaginable. Clara joined them on the porch, holding her notebook. "Tom, it is remarkable," she said softly. "Everything we have discovered has not only changed the town, but strengthened the bond between people, nature, and the mountains." Max was right all along. He guided us perfectly. Tom smiled and patted Max. "Yes, he did, and he will continue to guide us whenever we need him. The crystal and the town are part of something greater now, something that will last for generations." The mountains were quiet, the stars shining above Montana. The crystal's light pulsed gently in the clearing, sending warmth and energy through the land. Max lay quietly, alert and watchful, ready to lead anyone who needed guidance. The town slept peacefully, connected to the energy of the mountains and the crystal. In the morning, life would continue as usual for the townspeople, but they would feel the gentle effects of the energy everywhere they went. Crops would grow healthy, animals would remain calm, and the people would continue to smile more and care for one another. The discovery of the fiery streak, the crystal, and Max's guidance had created a new way of life. Tom, Clara, and Max knew that the adventure had not ended. The mountains held secrets, and the crystal's energy would continue to teach, guide, and protect. Max had discovered the truth, and together they had changed the town forever. Montana would never be the same again. Life had become brighter, stronger, and more connected. The crystal's energy, Max's guidance, and the care of Tom and Clara had united the town in ways that no one could have imagined. And as the stars twinkled above the mountains, the town rested peacefully, filled with hope, joy, and the gentle power of the mysterious crystal discovered by a loyal dog and a curious hiker. The story of the fiery streak, the mysterious stone, the crystal, and Max's discovery had reached its conclusion, yet its energy would continue to flow through Montana for generations, a reminder of the extraordinary connection between nature, curiosity, and the pure heart of a loyal dog.